So you said you have right now, and I've seen it through the different emails or Twitter posts that go out from Chittard, but 2 guys that are left going to state, correct?
Yeah, so they were both, they got runner-up at semi-state.
Okay.
So they're 2s. They'll draw 3s from another semi-state. There's 4 semi-states. There's 16 kids left. So
Gotcha.
4 kids from our semi-state and 4 kids in each weight class. So your final 16, like you're one of the top 16, you got to win 1 match on Friday and you become a state placer. Top 8, you get a medal. Like, which is, I mean, any other sport you think of like track or any of those individual sports, like having the fastest 8 kids or like winning this match on Friday night gets you a medal, and that's like the big deal.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a state placer at Chittard since Anthony Bill back in 2010.
Okay, that was my next question. I was like, I don't recall. I don't follow wrestling as much, but I don't recall many Chittard kids going to state.
It's been 25 maybe plus years since we've had 2 kids.
Okay.
And usually you'll have like 1 kid come through that's just like a lifelong wrestler, athlete, really good. Like I think there was a Schrader in like the 2014, 2015 time frame.
Okay.
We had Tommy, he was just like a freak athlete, and then it was Bill, and then it was Coach Mike Dumb. He coaches on the football team now.
Okay.
So it's usually just 1 individual that's really good. And I was like, we had 7 kids in the ticket round, like 1 match away from state. We have 4 of them returning next year. 2 kids make it down. Like you just got to keep building up your base there, right? So elevate the floor.
Yeah, so I graduated in 91. You have to talk about the year you were before you were even born. Wow, that just dated me.
What year old is
Thanks. We had several guys I played football. We had several guys that played football that also wrestled. But I don't remember off the top of my head how far any of them got.
I'm thinking 91 was like a Pettit around there. No, I guess it would have been
like Andy Swickheimer. I don't know if Fidel
Andy, his boy Drew is a beast football player, tight end that I'm trying to get back out to wrestle.
Okay,
he wrestled all the way. He wrestled his 8th grade year of CYO. Did he? And then I'm taking a little break, but we're working on getting him back. Yeah. He's big now.
Yeah, that's good. There you go.
This could be the easy high school wrestling podcast if we want to just talk about high school
well,
wrestling.
Probably not. Right? But hey, who knows? We might get a bigger audience.
He does walk around his house in a singlet, just for fun.
Wait, I thought I was the only one.
Sorry for the visual, everybody. So are they ranked real quick at all? Like the 2 guys that are going to state, are they those final 16? Do they fall in that?
So they do like right before the state run starts. They do. Okay. Indiana Map puts out like their own ranking. So Sam was 10.
Okay.
And I think Sam was 9 and Jack was 10 or something like that. Okay. But like they're undervaluing. Jack Davis is a junior. He was a state qualifier last year, so as a sophomore. So this is the 2nd time there. I think he's going to make a little run. Sam was 10 to get to state. His first round match of semi-state, he wrestled the number 13 kid, beat him. To get to state, he had to beat the number 5 kid, and then he beat like a high teens, low 20s kid in the semifinals, and then he lost a decently close one to the number 4 kid. Okay. So like he's in the mix to make some noise too. So they both, fingers crossed. We got to do our job. They got to do their job. Sure. But we hope to bring home some medals.
So feeling pretty good that they're both going to get beyond the Friday round.
Yes.
But we'll see.
You hope so.
Where's it held at?
Gamebridge.
Gamebridge.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
we'll be this weekend. Yeah.
So we'll be down there Friday, doing the whole. I mean, there's like a parade of all the teams because 224 kids. Right, 14 weight classes, 16 per. 224, and a lot of different schools get represented, right? So you think like back in the day, like when Chittard takes 1, but then like Southmont and Franklin County and all these random, like Richmond, and so you do have the blue bloods like Brownsburg, Crown Point, Center Grove, Cathedral, schools, right? Yeah. They have a lot of kids there, but it's always cool to see the like random kid from Adams Central High School or wherever, which I think is cool
solo kid, and he's like 72-1 in about 3 years or whatever.
Right. They wrestle. Yes, the competition level. Like when you're around Central Indiana, when you're around the region, and when you're around Evansville, the wrestling is just top tier there.
So it's like the Olympics opening ceremonies. You have like the U.S. walk in with tons of athletes, and then you get like the random island nation with like 3 athletes. Yes. Like, that's pretty cool.
Well, that was us with Tommy year 1, and like we had never been. This is our first time, and we hadn't had a kid make it in since 2014. So we get comedy there, and like we're all just like eyes wide open, like starstruck a little bit, like shit. And it goes. So our official name is Indianapolis Bishop Chatard.
Okay.
So we were right in front of. So it's us, and then Indianapolis Cathedral High School. So it's like their 7 kids and our 1 kid, and we're just like, hey, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah.
Like,
did you pull the old Hoosier thing? Did you go out there with the tape? Say, look, guys, the mat's the same size here.
I might need to do that.
Yeah,
I might need to bring the tape measure out. Like just me out there measuring it. Like, same size here, boys. Come on.
There you go.
I love it.
Yeah,
cool. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Industrious Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're joining us or tuning in on the Assessor YouTube channel. Thank you for doing so. We greatly appreciate it. Today, special guest, Mr. Nate Spangle, bringing in or I should say lowering the average age in the room, which is always a plus. Nate, welcome to the Industrious Podcast.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I'm excited.
You're welcome. Nate, why don't we start out with giving a little background on yourself, where you're from, and I guess the early years, if you will.
Yeah, I like
earlier
to believe,
years.
I was gonna say I like to believe we're still in the early years. Yeah. So I'm from Northern Indiana. I grew up in the town of Bourbon.
Yep.
1,200 people, 1 stoplight, a Subway, and a pizza place. Right in a local bar, Journey's End. Great place. I went to Triton.
Box?
Oh, they upgraded to touch tunes recently, in the past couple years, and I spend far too much money there. So small town, went to a 1A high school, Triton, was a football player, wrestled, did all the fun high school sports, and then I ended up getting on the team at DePauw University with a W in Greencastle. So from small town, went to DePauw, quickly realized that being good at a 1A high school with 15 kids or whatever we had does not translate to college football. So I thought I was going to walk in there and be the guy. I quickly realized that, man, those kids from Indianapolis and those kids from all over big schools know how to play football. So the writing on the wall pretty early on was that playing time was going to be sparse. And so I did the whole freshman, sophomore. I didn't want to stick it out. My big thing was I loved being around the locker room, around football, around sports. Those guys were some of my best friends. But by the time I got to be a senior, I really wanted to make an impact. I was like, dude, and being on the scout team as a senior, I'm like, what am I doing here? So I went to the coach and I was like, hey, I have this passion and kind of a talent for social media and for like video production. No formal training, just like taught myself by making funny videos or whatever. Yeah. And I asked if I could, do some video production and make like the hype videos for DePauw football. And everyone out there that's a Hoosier will know that the Monon Bell game is DePauw Wabash, super, super intense. I made a hype video using a bunch of other people. This is the funny part. Like I just pulled other people's footage, like a lot of other camera people, and edited it all into one, did some interviews, some voiceover, and I got to post it on the DePauw football Twitter. Back when the Instagram Reels and all that stuff wasn't a thing yet, and we got like 50,000 views, hyping up the Tigers against the Little Giants of DePauw or of Wabash, and I was hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fun, like a good hobby to have, like because no one gets paid to make videos, right? Like unless you're going to go to Hollywood, and that wasn't really my path. So from there, I then joined and did more with the TV station, which was like a YouTube channel at DePauw. I hosted my own show. I loved the production side. Like there was an artwork to that, but I also loved being on camera and trying to think of jokes or have the discussions or just think of content that people would be interested in. And I think on my first show, I hosted this Tiger Sports Nation, which was our sports show, and it'd be trying to make it more than just reading about and the football team won and the women's swimming team qualified for now. I was how do we make it more fun and exciting and bring in props and do whatever. And then my senior year, I ended up still doing the social media for DePauw, and I felt like I was making an impact. I would interview position groups, I went from making one video for the entire season to a preseason hype video. Every week I was dropping a video. like really help it. I mean, if recruits saw that, like people who were coming in, like they saw this content and would be hopefully inclined to come and join the team. So I felt like I was making an impact there.
Now, were you doing this still as a member of the team, or had you left the team to just focus on this stuff?
Senior year, I'm trying to think. I had pads junior year. I don't think I had pads senior year. And I think I had fully transitioned to, I was on the sideline, I had all the gear, but I was not like, I didn't practice junior year. I just like took a camera to 3 or 4 practices a week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did you balance like practice with this, with academic life and all the things?
So junior year, I would like finish practice and like pull out my camera and like I would still be in like shoulder pads or whatever, or I'd take the shoulder pads off but still be like in pants and would just start interviewing the guys and using equipment from the TV station, whatever. It was really fun and I was so passionate about building or making content. And it wasn't even a thing at the time. I was really passionate about making videos that people liked. And like the dopamine hit when someone was like, oh, that edit, like that was really cool. Like people were excited. And D3 football, it's like, besides the bell game, like it's moms and grandmas in the stands, right? It's like there's not a ton, like we didn't even have a student section that would come to most of the football games. So at least we were getting some like hype on social media.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you were sort of a torchbearer in the sense of like, we're IU grads, obviously a massive budget for that kind of stuff. I mean, if you walk down the hallway of Assembly Hall, you've got the Cuban Center for, digital media or whatever the formal name is. And, you look pregame football, basketball, all the major sports, even some of the smaller sports, they're all over social now with all their digital marketing and
huge
things.
budgets.
So to be doing that even just 7 years ago, like between then and now, that it's crazy.
And like there has definitely been an investment there, and with the rise of like the Instagram Reels and the YouTube Shorts and TikTok and all that stuff, like you see brands putting a lot of money into developing that style of content. And in a way, like the current landscape of it in 2018, 2019, everyone in the communications department that was a sports voice, and the Tigers with a 1st and 10, like it was very like done up and professional. And the questions that I would ask would be like just like very casual, like I wanted people to know who we were inside the helmet, right? And I always took this like the hype videos, like you wanted to like make the hair on the back of their neck stand up, but a lot of it was like giving the personality and just me. Like I never wanted to use my anchor voice and try to like be this newscaster playing this, because like the path is hard, right? If you want to be on the news, you got to go to a small market. You're in Terre Haute making $27,000 a year or whatever it is, like. And you got to like work your way up and be the best and get lucky and all. And I was like, I don't know. And that's what kind of kept me out of the game of content and media in the traditional sense. Because I'm also like pretty entrepreneurial. By the time I was a junior, I had tried like every not even business, side hustle hack thing in the book, like selling stuff on eBay. And before sports gambling was legal, like I ran a sports book in college, like for my fraternity.
Not real money. It was just for like food or beer.
Exactly.
Yeah, it
right.
wasn't real
but like,
money.
I mean, it was a wild time where I didn't even call them like business ideas. I was like, hey, let's go like make some money, like whatever the thing is. Like, and I would say like it wasn't ever conning people or doing anything like that, but it was like buy stuff on Amazon or buy stuff from Chinese websites and sell them on eBay. Do whatever the thing is and flip it and, make some money and kind of be like I would say like a hustler a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say though, you have pretty good PA voice that you threw out there though.
I can do it, and I do it as like a bit sometimes, like in some of the content where I'm like, if I'm introducing, it's like, and standing at 6 foot tall and weighing in at 225 pounds. I can pull it out, man.
I'm a little like Tom Carnegie or whatever his name.
Oh, I get to do the CYO little guy or cadet city championship. I get to introduce that and do like the walkouts, and I go crazy. It's like in another life, I was like the voice of high school sports in Indiana, and it still might be this life. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, Carnegie would be a great voice to emulate, as well as who was a guy that always did the Rose Bowl game? He's passed away.
Oh, Jackson?
Keith, was it Keith Jackson?
Yeah.
That'd be another one. Look it up. I'm sure there's old.
Oh my God. He's like,
who
the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. He may have. It's been a while since he passed away, but I'm sure you go to YouTube, you'll find old.
Like solid, like low bellowing, like perfect announcer voice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just one of those iconic voices.
Like Greg Rakestraw's got a good one, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got when I think of perfect announcer voice. He does a lot of the state finals for wrestling stuff. I'm out of town all to wrestling, right? But he's got a good voice for it.
Yeah.
He did. It's just a quick side note. My oldest is a senior at Brebeuf, played soccer, but also kicked for the football team. And there's a very big, some would say controversial football game against Danville. I mean, don't put the ref in a position to throw a flag. That's all I can say. Like, you put them in the position to have to do their job. But Rakeshaw was calling that game. It was pretty good to go back and listen to his review of total. You could tell the booth was totally confused as to what was going on, but he just handled it, like talked to it perfectly.
Keep talking, right? Like, awesome. That's the thing.
Well, the hustle and flow that started in college obviously has continued on. When you moved on from DePaul, what was the early years right out of college? Like, what did you get into?
I joined the Orr Fellowship program.
Yep.
So I came to Indianapolis. I worked at Apex Benefits.
We know John.
Great.
Shout out John goes.
It was John's the man. It was the perfect first job for me, right? So very creative, free spirit. Entrepreneur. I think I wrote an essay my freshman year, and I said I wanted to be involved in small business. I didn't even know what entrepreneurship or startups. Like, those words were kind of foreign. I said, like, I want to grow up and work. I want to own a small business or whatever. Yeah. So from being creative and all that stuff to then joining insurance, and this was pre-COVID, right? So at your desk at 8, leave at 5. Very it was the perfect guardrails for 2 years of learning how workplace, office culture and. I mean, it helped me grow up a lot. I get to be the fun guy in the office now, but it's because I have the backbone of 2 years, which is not that much time, but 2 years of learning how real business works. And sometimes when you're young and you have all these crazy ideas and you just want to go and change the world, then a little bit of patience and figuring out how to, whether it's marketing, and I was in sales, right? So how do I get people to talk about health insurance and benefits? People whose jobs are health insurance and benefits don't want to talk about health insurance and benefits, right? So but being a person, bringing personality into the workspace and not just being one of the other people that are dialing the phone and trying to get you to buy insurance. So it was awesome. And then after my 2 years, I kind of realized it wasn't my forever. I did want to get into a faster paced startup environment, so I joined a tech company. I was employee 6 at Powder Keg. And usually when people say you're employee 6, it's they blew up. We're on this up and down trajectory. We were pretty stable. I started as employee 6, we grew to 10 employees, and I left as employee 3. So just you see the ins and outs of a startup and positioning and testing and iterating and pivoting, and it was my MBA in startups and tech, and through doing that is where I started, getting back into content. I was so I've kind of always chased the experience. I could have probably gone and worked at Salesforce or tried to network my way into Lilly or a place like that where it's your path is really set out for you, but I really chased experiences. So the job that I took when I started was the head of community, and I was I don't even know anyone who has the title head of community. That's interesting to me. And so my job was,
let me ask you real quick, what is the definition of head of community?
Before you did the job, when they said we're going to make you head of community.
'Cause I could see how that could mean a couple different things depending on where you're at.
For me, what I thought going into it was a connector, helping keep this heartbeat of it was this organization of entrepreneurs in tech outside of Silicon Valley. So helping connect the dots, just being a master networker. And I was already doing this stuff.
Not within the 4 walls of Powder Keg, but externally.
Yeah. So all of our customers basically. And customers come because they want to be a part of this ecosystem. And you're raising money, you need to meet our VC partner that we know. And you're looking for startups in healthcare. I know startups in healthcare. And so I got to
what you were doing was capitalizing, and I've said this a bazillion times. You were born and raised in Indiana, so you know this. Indy in particular. They say it's 7 ways back to Kevin Bacon, New York City. In Indy, it's 2.
2, exactly.
So what you're doing was key, because I think as Hoosiers, generally we want to help each other out, at least most of us do. Yeah. And that connecting just shrinks it down even that much more and makes what I feel this broader community, just something special that not every communities can say they have.
And I mean, we harp on it. Every guest that I bring on my podcast, we talk about it truly is special. And it's always great to see the people that are not from here originally like, I'm not from Indianapolis, right? Like, I grew up in a small town. My dad didn't play golf with anyone down here, so I didn't get intro that way. I started reaching out to people and taking advantage of my opportunity at Orr Fellowship, taking advantage of my opportunity at Powder Keg, where, I got, when I would email CEOs and say, hey, this is a person that you should be on your radar, they would email me back as like a 25-year-old because I was actually providing something of value to them. Yep. Versus like, hey, can I pick your brain for coffee? Like no one has, like, respectfully, no one has time to pick your brain for coffee. But if you're bringing them like, hey, I know you talked about, and remembering something, you talked about potentially raising your Series A next year in your health tech startup. I just met this health tech investor from wherever. Like, maybe you guys should be introduced. So I'm super grateful for that opportunity. That also got me, when we started the Get In podcast, it was with Powder Keg, with Elevate Ventures. And somehow I got to be the voice of young people on it. So I got to sit on there with Christopher Day and Matt Hunkler and me as like our 3 co-hosts, which I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And these are like, not chasing necessarily money, but chasing these opportunities. I was like, great, I'm all in. And that was when we started, and we would just, bring in business leaders and talk to them about how they grew their company and this, that, and the other thing. And I always got to ask I'm the rookie in the group, right? Like, how are you thinking about it? And I would bring this young, recent college grad perspective and try to bring a little bit of fun and personality and we did some fun segments and stuff like that. So that would have been 23. At the end of 23, it was starting to look like, okay, well, the podcast isn't really taking off. It's not doing what we were hoping. We were hoping that, tens of thousands, millions of people will be listening to this thing. And it's a long, arduous process of growing a podcast. I'm sure you guys know. So we were at a crossroads of like, do we get rid of this thing? It's not mission critical to our business, but I really loved it. I was having so much fun. And so that's where I had started putting out a bunch of content on social media to get people to listen to the podcast because I wanted the podcast to stay alive. So like I was saying, I'll post on my personal Instagram about this podcast because I want people to listen to it so that we can keep doing it because it's my favorite part of my job. And I started putting out recommendations for things in indie and kind of like lifestyle auxiliary content. Then it would be like a podcast clip. And the whole ethos was the more people discovered my profile, they would come back and watch it. And so it was spring, maybe like probably this time last year.
Yeah.
I got this grand idea. I was like, the Indy 500 is like really big in Indiana, right? Like it was really big globally,
Wait,
right?
What's the Indy 500?
Yeah, right. That race thing.
Did you come by our tailgate?
Yeah.
I may or may not have remembered if you did.
Yeah, right. That's how I feel. And I said, me and my buddies had always talked about buying a truck off Facebook Marketplace and like for $500 and just leaving it there, like tailgating all day and just be like, I don't want to.
The funny thing is, I laugh because that's probably not the first time someone's thought of that.
No,
or done it.
No. Yeah. I mean, there was this decade called the 70s and maybe even the early 80s that was
origin
just
of
normal.
the snake pit, right?
Yeah,
like that stuff is crazy.
How many cars or buses or vans were just left?
Couches.
And it's a plug. Go back to listen to my episode with Doug Bowles, and he talks about the origin of the snake pit and how they had to like disband it, and then how they brought it back in a more structured way, right?
Yeah.
Well,
but the OG snake pit was just like a free-for-all party that you could keep
it was a
kids away from.
rave before there was a thing called a rave.
Yes.
Yeah, before you had
absolutely.
like EDM and the big stages.
Yeah.
People were doing their own thing.
Yeah. And so I had this idea, and I was like, well, and I want to be the first truck in the infield for the Indy 500. And at the point I had like, I think 7,000 or 10,000 Instagram followers, which was like enough that I felt like I was cool and like that people would care, but not enough to like make a business out of it, right? Yeah. And so I took $3,000, which was like a lot of money, sure. Right? But I was like, worst case scenario, I buy this truck. So the whole story is I took $3,000. I bought a truck on Facebook Marketplace, and I documented this whole journey. It's an '86 Dodge, like Ram.
From and like it runs.
It barely. Bought it in Akron, Indiana. My buddy is like the ultimate mechanic engineer. I took it up to him back in Bremen, which is just north of Bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
And we like fixed it all up. And then I was making content the whole time, like, we're going to be the first truck through the infield, and I'm going to host an all-Indiana tailgate and with only Indiana brands, like no Bud Light, no Coors Light, Sun King, and Upland, and all this stuff. And it, like the first video I posted of like the Indy 500 challenge got like 50,000 views, which at that point was like one of my biggest videos. Yeah. And people were all about, and I was getting DMs like, we want to be involved in this. So like, Upland reached out, basically, what was it? 4 Day Ray, like all of these breweries, these food partners. Like it was nuts, and I ended up making $10,000 from to tailgate and make and like every sponsorship was paired with a video. So like there was like this journey of me driving the truck back down to Indy and stopping through like a Java house and like going to all the, and so we got there Saturday night before the Indy 500. We so it was like 10:30 p.m.
I'll say, what time did you line up in front of the gate?
10:30.
Okay.
On the north gate.
Okay.
And we then served coffee and donuts to the next 25 cars behind us. So like Long's Donuts, Java House Coffee. And that video went super viral. And just like all of these pieces of like Java House's, I think their sponsorship at the time was like $1,000, which to me, I was like, holy smokes, they're going to pay me $1,000 to do this. The video, like all the videos we did with them, like got tens of thousands. That video got 200,000, I think.
Sweet. And so you're like, I just want to buy this shitty old truck and have a great time. And then suddenly you start getting these DMs, you're like, oh, light bulb.
Yeah, and it was like, it just kind of like naturally happened by like doing something cool. This like big initiative. We ended up going in, we documented the whole thing, and we gave away a set of Best One tires, or like from Best One Indy. I got to give. I drew a name out of a bucket in the middle of the Indy 500 and gave someone $1,000 worth of tires. And I was just like, this life is crazy. And so I ended up coming back after the Indy 500. And just being like, man, if I did that on one thing, I ended up through the whole process, got almost 1 million views on content, gained like 10 or 15,000 followers. So I was at like 20, low 20s on Instagram at that point. So I think I can do something here. Like I think between like being a marketing consultant and contractor and the social media kind of thing, I think I can do something. So I ended up signing one customer. His name is Dan Hannerhan. He runs NeighborServe.
Yeah.
Great company. He brought me.
We won't say where he went to high school, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan.
We don't hold that against him. But he gave me a chance to be like a fractional marketer for them.
Okay.
Like 20 hours a week or whatever, which was like cool. I have enough money coming in to pay the bills. And then I went out and I talked to Matt Hunkler, who is the founder of Powder Keg. I was like, I know the podcast really is kind of stagnant here. I think that if I took it and acquired it from you, that I could open it up a little bit more from just business leaders to anyone in Indiana that has a cool story, that's doing something special that other Hoosiers need to know about. So I ended up acquiring that from him, and I actually traded like marketing consulting work, like I traded my time to both of these for like one to pay the rent, or actually pay my mortgage. I have a house. So marketing for Dan, paid that, and marketing for Powder Keg and doing some consulting work there. I got to acquire the podcast.
Nice.
And then it was like, do whatever you want. And so the Get In podcast, and then we kind of formulated this idea for Get Indiana, and it's been, I left my job in June last year, so we're coming up on a year. But kind of like I say, like the beginning of this year was like the official launch of, okay, it's not just Nate being an influencer, but it's this company that's really a modern media source for Hoosiers, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people listen to Gary Dick for many, many years, and he makes great content, but like no one, not a lot of people that are in their 20s and 30s are seeing Gary. I think he's on YouTube, but he's not on Instagram, he's not on TikTok, and that's where a lot of my generation consumes our content.
Right.
And we know so much more about what's going on in national pop culture, national news, but we don't know what's going on in our backyard. And so that's what I'm going out to solve, I suppose, is provide information, content, happy, uplifting, positive news of Hoosiers in people's feeds, like where they consume content.
Right. I know you've connected with Gary. Would you consider him a mentor at this point?
I need to talk with him more and like learn from him more. We haven't sat down nearly enough. I know him. We've like rubbed shoulders and stuff. And I mean, he's been doing this for a really long time and knows the state of Indiana. I mean, just as well, if not better than anyone. I'd like to have a more formal mentorship with Gary. But yeah, I learned from him. And then I think my biggest mentors thus far have been either business leaders that like operate different businesses, because there's not that many people running content companies.
Yep.
But on a national level, there are lots of these. Like Morning Brew out of New York, right? They kind of innovated on the Wall Street Journal and have made a modern media company about business and tech news. There are lots of creators that talk about whatever their niche is on a national level, and I'm doing this more on the Indiana geographical level.
Yeah. Well, I would recommend Gary would make a natural mentor for a lot of different reasons. But two, good on you for having that moment at the Speedway, because I think a lot of people probably have that singular moment that I want to say it's their 15 minutes of fame, but it comes and goes, right? What do they do with it? A lot of people may do nothing with it. But then taking that, realizing, hey, this might be my start, and then having the persistence to carry it forward, that's going to be the key. That's what's going to separate you from all the others who maybe try one or two other things and it fizzles out, and they lose interest and go on to something else. But,
well, I had to do that a lot of times before. Like this is,
right.
I've started, I don't know, 7 or 10 side hustles, like I still own an e-commerce company called Bat Hats. It's like a golf head covers, but for baseball and softball bats. I mean, we started that in 2019 with one of my buddies from my fraternity. And it's like, it always has done well, like above 50 grand a year, less than $100,000 a year, right? So like not enough to live off of. There's obviously a lot of expenses and it's a product, but like we were testing and learning and growing there and building something, right? We raised money for that from like our first investor ever. So learning about that process. I started a newsletter about sports gambling right when it was getting legalized. I was like, there's this opportunity here. We grew that to almost 3,000 subscribers, I think, all free and organic traffic there.
Sold to DraftKings for $1 billion.
I was trying to, man. It was hard. But then now we have a newsletter with Get Indiana, and it has 7,000 subscribers. Yep. And we launched it in October. So like it took us 3 years to get 3,000 subscribers, and then in 3 months we had over 5,000 subscribers on Get Indiana. So it's like been this. Like I've gotten my 1,000 hours of failing in side hustles and startups. Like I could go back. I mean, e-commerce, media. Oh my! I wanted to clean people's gutters. Like just any type of like learning about these hustles or side businesses, that would create money and give me experience and learning. Like I didn't learn as much from reading and watching videos. Like I just like throw myself in the fire and like learn how to do it and fail a bunch of times and then pivot, and now that's what's gotten me here today. And my dream was always to be like all in on something.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, like you, like, I still get this, and I love it. It's my favorite conversation where it's like, oh, like what do you do full time? And you go, I own a media company, and they're like, that's your job? Like, yeah, it's great. Like, I mean, like it's just been so fun, and it, like if you think about like Joe Rogan or the biggest podcast, Call Her Daddy, right? Like all these the biggest podcasts in the world, like they're signing $250,000, $1 million deals. It's like great. Slap a few knock a few zeros off of that, and like the economics of it works for a state. Yeah. And it's arguably more valuable for Indiana-based businesses to have 52,000 Hoosiers that follow me on Instagram, to have 7,000 Hoosiers that subscribe to our newsletter. They can drive to these places and experience this. And your marketing dollars, you can feed Facebook, and yes, there's geo-targeting and all that stuff, but like I bring on people that I trust and tell stories that people want to hear about, the people in their local community that are also. I say it's like it's not just like Joe owns a power washing company and it is, but if Joe has an interesting story about how he grew up on the rough side of Indianapolis and has like persevered and grown this power washing, it's like that's a story we want to tell.
Sure.
So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, and you're reaching. I mean, if you've got a sponsor or a partner that says, okay, you're reaching a market that's not our target, there's no value created there. But if you can bring real stories and real experiences and expand that out to an audience, and then people say, well, that's the same audience we're trying to get to, it's essentially a win-win.
Yeah, and like the best thing that I've seen is look at the national brands, right? Like Anheuser-Busch hires Post Malone and Shane Gillis to star in their commercials and post on their social media. It's like the numbers clearly make sense there. Wouldn't the numbers make sense for Sun King or Upland to do that in Indiana, where their target market is? And like, yeah, obviously it's a lot cheaper than hiring like a national celebrity or whoever. Jake from State Farm, right? Like, okay, State Farm is doing that. Like they're clearly investing in social media. They put a ton of content out.
Right.
What about Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance? Do they need a Nate from Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance versus a Jake from State Farm? Like,
well, are you willing to wear
khakis?
It does
sound right? You know what I'm saying? But like the economics of it and like the business mind, and this is where I think the previous part of failing a bunch has helped me, because a lot of times like So there's some people who are really good at being creators, like making the content, and I love it. That's like my art form, right? Making a video that captivates people that they want to watch, having a conversation, posting a podcast. I love that. But it's like a lot of people are really good at that, but don't know how to make a business out of it.
I say, how do you monetize it? I feel like I'm not huge on social media, like intentionally, but I have teenagers.
Yeah.
I see a lot of it out there. 99% of people that are on Instagram, the old people that are still on Facebook, people on whatever, whether it be Twitter/X or Snapchat or all the things, right? 99% of them are there to just put out their life and to consume content. The 1% that are doing that, and I have a brother-in-law who is the digital marketing manager for one of the biggest churches in the country. He and I will sit down over a bottle of wine, and he'll just tell me all the things he's doing from the business aspect. I'm like, it's coming at me like a fire hose. My question to you is, I think, and you were about to go there, is how do you monetize that?
Yeah,
because that's just the coolest. It's still such a new-ish industry. Especially for old people like us, or old people like him and semi-old like me. But like, how do you monetize that, taking the art form of the content creation into the business aspect?
Yeah. So the easiest, I always say, like the place that a lot of people start is from like when you're a lifestyle creator, it's like, what are you eating and where are you playing, right? Like you're going to a Pacers game. It's really easy, no offense to anyone out there who's like a Pacers creator or a food creator, to make that content viral, right? So like Pacers don't have to pay someone to make, or maybe they do, like if they're like a 1 million follower celebrity, right? Like they maybe have to pay for a video
but
there.
That creator's leveraging the Pacers brand and that audience already.
It was like when it's a really popular restaurant, like they don't necessarily have to pay that much to just get like a video about the dining experience there, because a lot of people will do that for free or like for very little. So a lot of people, when they start to get followers on social media, they can go work with restaurants and make $200-$300 for a video, which is really good. If that's like your side hustle, like you're doing well there. But I want to make this like my whole thing. Like this is my life, right? This is my business. So I looked at what are the businesses that are buying billboards, that are buying radio ads, TV sponsorship, newspaper ads, that are not investing in social media and are not investing in creators. What are the hard businesses? And like find their analogs. So like one of my partners is Keller & Keller, personal injury law. They have advertising everywhere. Okay, so Keller & Keller has never worked with a creator. They buy a lot of advertising, but like Morgan & Morgan is like the national leader. Right, Morgan & Morgan is everywhere. It's $1 billion whatever revenue company. They're investing in social media and creators and doing those kind of like social media ads. So I go to them. It's like, it's working here. It's like, how do we do this but for Indiana? And how can I take these not as easily Instagrammable businesses, like apartment communities? When they do it, they want to do a tour, and like everyone's seen an apartment community host their tour. So I did like this grandiose tour of the penthouse on Mass Ave and the company that owns that. And it's a property that everyone's always wanted to see the inside. If you're ever at Rathskeller, you look up and you're like, I wonder who lives up there. And I just like DM'd them and was like, would you give me a tour of this place and like let me show you? And like it was great, right?
So it's a company that owns it, not a private individual.
Yeah, it's JC Hart. It's a JC Hart complex.
Yeah.
So I just like work with JC Hart, and they're like, would you like find creative ways to promote the rest of our organization and like all these things? So it's finding the brands that have larger marketing budgets, and then finding a creative way to build content with them that people actually want to watch.
Right.
Versus like, restaurants and food, like those are the easiest ones, right? But like one of my partners is Hope Plumbing. It's like, how do we make interesting, engaging plumbing content, right? Where it's like I get to be Mike Rowe for a day and like go out there and do a Dirty Jobs episode and do stuff like that.
So that's show showers though and no toilets. Like I'll do showers.
Yeah, right.
How much crack can you show? I mean,
yeah, exactly. Like that'll be. I mean, I'm really excited for taking the brands that want to invest in social media. Like a lot of them, you have a social media manager, you're paying 40, 50, 60 grand a year, and you're getting 10 likes on your post.
Right.
Like, and because they're doing the act of social media, right? Like they're posting, but they're like, oh, it's just how it is when you're a business. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that way. Right. Like Wendy's Twitter account has millions of followers, and they're like 8 angsty and sassy on Twitter, and they're like mean a little bit, like they like talk smack to people, and it's great. It's like their brand. So I go and work with these brands in Indiana to find content that people want to watch that's also sponsored, right? That's I always say, like when I meet with a partner, it's like I have to want to make the video even if it was for free, because that's what people are going to watch it, right? Yep. When I think of like some of the best partnerships that I've had, like some of them were in travel and tourism, like those ones are fun to like go, down to French Lick and do that kind of stuff, right? But when you're working with, whether it's a law office or apartment complexes, like I got to go on like a job site for a new apartment build and ask questions that everyone's wondering, like, oh man, like how much training does it take to run a bulldozer, and like, can I do? No, I was not allowed to do it, but like, just be a novice a little bit, like what was here before and what's going to be coming up through here, and it's been really fun, and I like the idea or the problem of making a business about it and trying to be more than just like Nate Spangle Enterprises, right? Like get Indiana as a brand. I hope to one day have multiple creators that don't look like me, that don't sound like me. Like I have a very specific flavor. I scream at people through the phone and I bring a lot of energy, and some people love it, some people hate it. Right? So if that's not your forte, cool. I hope to have a chill creator one day, or a mom creator, or a grandpa that woodworks, right?
So to that end, what is your goal? What's your aspiration for Get Indiana?
To be the go-to media outlet for the state of Indiana, right? Like be a place that people come for, and we're not like, it's not murders, and I don't say it's like news. I say media outlet intentionally, right? Like I don't know if like breaking news is my forte, but like finding these stories of Hoosiers that are doing interesting things and telling those, like that's what I'm super passionate about, and making it applicable to people no matter whether you live in South Bend or Evansville or anywhere in between.
Right.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, because I've made this comment, like standing around the kitchen in the evening when hanging out with the kids and the wife and doing dinner or whatever, and then you have the local news on. And if, let's say it's a 30-minute time slot, maybe there's 20 minutes of actual news outside the commercials. 19 of those 20 minutes are on current events that generally are bad news. And then they'll always end the broadcast with like, and we'll end with the good news story of the day. I'm like, dang, man, for 19 minutes, all you talked about was like death and destruction. Yeah. And for 1 minute at the end, you like spotlighted some story of someone in the city or the state to like try to lift people back up. I was like, maybe the news should spend 1 minute on the death and destruction and 19 minutes on, forgetting necessarily the current events and like actual stories that are more positive.
It's because of that, because of our kids' age don't even want to watch the news because it's so negative on that early part.
Yeah, and it's like, and I always say someone has to do that work, right? Like it's important to tell all those stories. That's just not me. Like I'm not meant to like get on camera and talk about like all the bad things, but I'm like trying to fix the bad things. And by uplifting and talking and speaking good things into existence, and maybe more people can strive to be like, I mean, I have the guy who ran around the country, like literally ran from Kokomo. He went to Cleveland.
Wait, you interviewed Forrest Gump?
He's better than Forrest Gump. He ran the perimeter of the United States, and he's from Kokomo, or he's from like up right in that area, Marion.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, he ran from Cleveland up to Maine, down to the Keys, across the bottom through Texas to California, up 12,000 miles. Unreal. And he just lives under about, and I was like, dude, what made you? He's like, I don't know, I just started running.
And you were like, I ran 31 miles on the Monon.
And I thought I was cool, right? Like,
I saw that. I was like, that's pretty.
And so it's like doing stuff like that. It's like I run an ultra marathon on the Monon, document the process, so that maybe you guys will take a Sunday stroll and like walk a 5K. Yeah. Like, you know what? We are lucky to have the Monon, right? It's an awesome piece of what makes Indianapolis and Central Indiana amazing.
Yeah.
So like it's. I wouldn't say like everything that I do, the majority of it's not news necessarily. It's media, it's entertainment, and it's you get to be more informed. And so I love it when someone gets to like learn something from one of my videos or a podcast, and then they're in a conversation, they're at the water cooler, and they're like, man, did you hear about that guy from Marion that ran around the country? Like, Cameron's amazing, right? Or just like, did you hear about the history of the snake pit on Nate's podcast? Like, I had no idea. And it answers a lot of these questions that people sometimes think, but maybe Google doesn't answer.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Well, we appreciate you sharing all this. I do have a last question for you. I mean, I think it says a lot about the hustles that you had and some of the failures that you've already experienced. I think whether it's John Gauze or any of the other entrepreneurs that you meet, will tell you we learn more about the failures than we do the successes. So what advice would you give other fellow, early to mid 20-year-olds, or even regardless of age, who aspire, have ideas or dreams of doing their own thing but haven't taken that leap yet? What advice would you give them?
Okay, I'm going to go back to get to that question.
Sure.
So I had a very enlightening moment early in my life, okay? So I was a sophomore in college, and I lost my mom to cancer. And I was kind of like a middle of the road. Like, I was like a hustler, but I don't know if I was as grateful for the opportunities that had been presented with me. And so my sophomore year at DePaul, I transferred home, and I spent 4 months driving my mom to cancer treatment appointments, and unfortunately she lost that battle. And when she passed away, it was kind of like an enlightening moment to me about the fragility of life. And a lot of people say, like, you're not promised tomorrow, like, go out and carpe diem, like, make the most of it. And it's a hard thing especially when you're young and you think you know it all. It's a hard thing to grasp, right? Like, at 19, 21, I was invincible. I'm gonna live forever. Like, nothing can stop me. And then you see, my best friend, right? Like, goes through her experience with cancer and loses that battle, and I still believe I'm invincible, right? Like, I'm gonna go do all this crazy stuff, but it makes me more urgent to, like, go and make a change.
Sure.
And so for me, it was balancing that. So for 27-year-old entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out if they want to go do this, I was urgent in taking steps, but also patient. That, like, I wasn't, like, Mark Zuckerberg's story is like 1 in a billion, right? Like, not everyone, and I was dead set when I was young. I was like, I'm so smart, I'm so this. And, like, the moment that I kind of, like, said, okay, let's just keep working, be patient, do the right thing, give a ton, so that, like, one day I get to go call, like, when I left my job, and Dan, I was like, I want to start this company, but I have 0 revenue on it right now. And he was like, well, what skills do you have? And I'm like, I'm a marketer at heart, right? So he gave me the opportunity. And it's because I had stacked so much hay in the barn that I finally got to start, like, asking, hey, I need a favor, right? Like, hey, do you have work that I could do? And so I don't think that it's this an all or nothing thing where it's like, okay, I need to start my business today and quit everything and go all in. It's like, man, I worked a lot of 5 to 9s, a lot of, like, close the laptop from spending a full 8 hours every single day selling insurance while I was at Apex Benefits, right? Like, and then at 5 o'clock when I clocked out, then I would go work on whatever the project was, and I would get the experience and the fails, and then start to build up, whether it's, like, there's a number, right? Like, how much are your expenses and what can you afford to do? And I don't have a wife or kids, so I knew what, like, my mortgage was. I knew, like, what a car payment was, and it's like, get to that number, and then don't get greedy, and, like, continue to stack up. I think a lot of times it's like when you take the promotion and the salary, you have the lifestyle creep, and, man, like, I'm still not making a lot of money. Like, it's not like I'm just rolling in it, but, sure, but we're on the right path now, and it's like just around the bend. Like, you just got to keep working, but it's like, find your number. Take those little steps when you can, 5 to 9. And if you're not willing to work on your dream from 5 to 9 p.m., like, it's probably not the dream that you want. And so you take those steps, and then finally you can start to, like, replace and get some other income coming in with whatever the thing is. And then you're at a point where it's like, oh, well, I replaced my salary and I can do this thing. Like, it's not going to be a big deal. And it's slowly taking those steps and then making the full-on jump. Right. And then getting health insurance or doing all that, like, it's all figure-outable.
Sure.
Like, I was really nervous about that. Like, oh, man, I'm 27. I'm going to get kicked off my parents' health insurance, like, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, it's all figure-outable.
Yep. So at the end of the day, it's have grit. You certainly have grit, as we like to call it. Grit being the psalm of passion and persistence. There's no question you've got that.
I haven't heard that. I like that.
Yeah.
The sum of
look. If you read a lot of books, look at the book called Grit, written by this college professor. It's pretty good. That's her formula for it.
I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna put that to my list. I think that a lot of times when it's like I always say, like, youth is wasted on the young or whatever, right? Like, when I was 22, 23, I thought that like, why am I not successful now? Like, why am I not an influencer? Why do people not care what I have to think about? Like, I know all the right answers. And like the moment that I kind of started listening more, which is so funny because I host a podcast, but like it's a podcast where I try to listen more than I talk. Like this is I love getting to go do this because it's like no one wants to hear me give my sermon for an hour twice a week, right? Yeah. It's like I get to come on and when I started listening more than I was talking and filling in gaps for people and like delivering value and like, you know, I say like your community or your network is kind of like the giving tree, right? Like don't be the little boy that just takes and takes and takes and takes and then all you're left with is a stump.
Yep.
Like good things happen when you have that the passion and the persistence and the grit. I love that.
Yeah. The art of listening is key, as you just alluded to. Second thing, I actually knew the story about your mom. Aaron had shared that with me. Joe and I and our family have spent the last 20 plus years doing a lot in the world of cancer here in Indiana. We can talk about this offline or on another podcast. But I think it's safe to say that she's pretty proud of what you're doing now and that you keep going after your dreams.
I appreciate that. I mean, I kind of sometimes like take it back and blink a little bit of like what I wished for, you know, 5-10 years ago. It's like, I want to be doing this thing. It's like, and it's like starting to come to reality right now. And then it's like being, I hate to say like content, but being like aware of like, wow, what I wanted then is what I'm doing now. And then also being hungry and like figuring out what the next thing is. And I think it's like when you're young, right? I always thought like my mom wouldn't care if I made $100,000, if I made $10,000, if I made $1 million. And like when you're young, you're like, I want to go make a ton of money.
Right.
But like what I think, and I appreciate you saying that she would be proud, like the impact that I get to make and the stories and that piece that we get to capture and share. Like that's what I'm most proud of, I think.
Yeah, awesome.
It's a good way to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and sharing the story and your background. We appreciate it. Count us as new members of your network, and if we can assist in some way, we're happy to do so.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. This is awesome.
Cool. Yeah. And thank all you guys for checking out this episode of the Industrious Podcast. We thank you for sharing your time with us and taking all this in. For those of you watching on the Sussa YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. It won't take you but a second. And hit that little notification bell icon so you can be alerted when new episodes like this one drop. Thanks, guys. And don't forget, at the end of the day, just like Nate said, be industrious.